Welcome to SkyeTeam's People First with Morag Barrett.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of People First. And I think it's a first on People First. I have not one, but two amazing guests. With me are Paul Savardi, who is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Insperity, which he co-founded in 1986. He played a major role in establishing a new industry outsourcing the HR function and served as president of the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations. He led Insperity through a public offering on the New York Stock Exchange in 1997 and has continued as the company's CEO for more than 30 years. Paul was recognized as the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in the service category in 2001 and inducted into the Texas Business Hall of Fame in 2007. He brings substantial executive experience and insight as CEO of an industry-leading HR services company and is, in addition to the book we'll be discussing, the author of Take Care of Your People. And with him is his colleague, Dr. Eli Jones, who is Professor of Marketing, Lowry and Peg Mays Eminent Scholar, and the former Dean of Mays Business School at his alma mater, Texas A&M University. His many awards include the American Marketing Association's Lifetime Achievement Award and the prestigious AMA Irwin McGraw-Hill Distinguished Marketing Educator Award, Savoy Magazine's Most Influential Corporate Director, Texas A&M's Aggie Impact Award, and the Academy of Marketing Sciences Distinguished Marketing Educator Award. He is also one of 12 recipients in the TAMU system to be awarded the Chancellor's Medal for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Dr. Jones has worked in sales and sales management for 3 Fortune 500 global companies and is currently on the boards of Invesco Funds, Insperity, and First Financial Bank. His mission is to bridge academia and business, and his many books include Selling ASAP and Run Towards Your Goliaths. However, today we're going to be discussing their new book, Making Differences Work, a new values-based, culture-driven, people-centric approach to achieving commonality, equality, cohesion, and business performance. More on that later, but in the meantime, Eli and Paul, welcome to People First.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
I am so looking forward to our conversation, and I started reading your book over the weekend and couldn't put it down, and so it is still on the yet to be finished, but far enough through that you have piqued my curiosity. But before we dive into some of the insights that readers will gain from the book, I want to start with your origin story. And maybe, Dr. Jones, I will start with you. When you were a wee lad, elementary school, so long before you're a professor at a university, and the teacher said to you, Eli, what do you want to be when you grow up? What was your answer back then?
Wow, that was a long time ago. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I love animals.
Oh.
And I had the opportunity to work in a lab on Texas A&M's campus when I was a sophomore in high school and discovered that I'm allergic to most animals.
No.
Didn't quite work out, but I need to learn that I could have gone the research angle and still been a vet. But I really fell into writing with journalism and in business. I come from an entrepreneurial background, and that's something that Paul and I have in common. And so I'm fast forwarding many years ago. I'm happy that I landed where I landed.
Okay, fair enough. But as a side note, so you have a Labradoodle right now, or a naked cat that, no?
I have a Belgian Malinois, and it's a beautiful dog, and we just love him. And so anyway, we have had 2 dogs, a few cats along the way. Mm-hmm.
All right, a handsome breed, that one. All right, Paul, what about you? Again, flashback, you're at elementary school, the teacher says, Paul, what do you want to be? What was your answer back then?
Well, in those early days, I wanted to be a professional golfer because it was such an exciting thing to me. And I've spent a lot of my time at that age just chipping around the backyard. I only had one little cutoff club, but I learned quickly that I didn't have the skill set for at that level. But I really got overtaken by entrepreneurship. I was constantly, trying to start this business or that business, from the lemonade stand to you name it. And that became clear to me that that was really what my heart was about. In fact, when I went off to college, I was going to be a chemical engineer, just like my dad. And after 1 year at that, I said, hey, you know what? I think I'm just doing that for him and not for me. What I need to do is start my own businesses. And that's where I went from there.
Wow, wow. Well, so it's important, and I'm curious to know the role relationships have played in both of your successes. So, Paul, what role have relationships played in the success you've experienced and the success of Insperity?
Sure. Well, for me, the biggest thing was to really understand who I wanted to help in life. And my heroes out there are those who start and build small and medium-sized businesses. That whole idea of entrepreneurship is at the heart. And so, I've been able to gather around me, even, Eli's a great example of one of our board members who has that heart for entrepreneurs. And that's what I look for in everybody that works at Insperity. I want them to understand that and how we can make a difference. Because, at Insperity, we say our mission is helping businesses succeed so communities prosper. There's such a ripple effect out into the communities by helping businesses succeed. And the one that makes that happen, who takes the risk, who puts out the effort, is that business owner.
Okay.
And if I may I build off of that?
Yes, please do.
Because we both, we talk about our commonalities. Here's another one of those things we have in common. So I grew up with a set of entrepreneurs, both of my parents. My dad had a 6th grade education. He went to the Army. He got out of the Army. He started a dry cleaners, held on to a dry cleaners for many years, and then sold it to a chain, bought a ranch, became a rancher, bought a convenience store. He led a convenience store, he and my mom. And so, as Paul just said, with that kind of a background, I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurs. I grew up around entrepreneurs. I'm entrepreneurial myself. So that's another thing that he and I have in common, that passion for entrepreneurs.
So that creative, that innovation, taking a blank sheet of paper or that idea to real life seems to be a common theme for both of you. So I'm curious, what was it and how was it that the two of you came together to write this great book? And again, I'll just share the title because I'm going to encourage everybody to get their hands on it, Making Differences Work. So what brought you two together to co-author this?
That's a very good question. And then the direct answer is that when the George Floyd murder took place here in the United States, that was such a shocking moment across the world, really, watching that length of time of a knee on the neck of a human being and watching them pass away in front of you. And that reverberated throughout the business world as well. And in our own company, we had a similar reaction of the pain and anxiety that came from that experience. And in our particular business, we have an incredible, amazing corporate culture of caring for one another. But we've gotten there without having a DEI program. And so after that took place, there was a lot of what should we do next? What should we do now? And I was really wanting to understand better what people were feeling and how they were hurting. And one of the very first calls I made was to my trusted friend, Dr. Jones, to just start asking him, what is it I'm not understanding about what's going on here? And he did a great thing by helping me understand that. And ultimately, I ended up deciding I needed to write about why we have such a great foundation. The real key here is that we went through a process of having our culture analyzed by outside folks who really understand the DEI world. And when it came to the end, it turned out we were far above the thresholds against comparing to other companies. And I asked them, why do you think we are coming out better than the standard. And they said, well, we're not sure, since I wasn't doing the DEI programmatic things. And I said, well, I think I know why. And I said, but I've never written it down. And of course, that next call was to Dr. Jones about helping us write all this down.
It's interesting because what I hear there, and I have a similar experience here at SkyeTeam, is when you live and breathe the values and principles that you outline in the book, it almost becomes a shock that others aren't doing it, and hard to articulate because it's just how we show up and just how we do business. And you start the book with 10 commonality, 10 principles that guide you throughout. And each of them starts with the word common. And that made me pause, because one of them's common sense, but it's an uncommon discipline when you go beyond. And there are plenty of folks who'll come up with yes buts, why this won't work here, or why we could never do that. And personally, I call BS, because if a small business like SkyeTeam can do it, and if a large business like Insperity can do it, the rest of it is just, excuses. It's time to start up. So Eli, when you were doing the research to try and articulate what makes the Insperity culture so unique, what was most surprising for you?
It was more validation. So I've been associated with the company for 20 years. I joined the board in 2004 and took a little hiatus and came back. But yes, so it was really validation. I know Paul's heart. I watched the company grow. I know how much he means when he says, take care of your people. So it was really easy for us to go through and identify what are the concepts that we want to measure. That was the critical part. So when we think about these concepts, one of the things that he and I did at the very beginning was to say, look, what is it that every organization wants, right? And we started with 4 outcomes. So I always start with the outcome that every organization wants. And we identified those 4, he and I, just kind of thinking through it. Every organization wants a collaborative culture, people working together and collaborating. Mm-hmm. Every organization wants where the employees' values, their own personal values, align with the company's core values. Every organization wants innovation, new ideas, creativity. And every organization wants their employees to go above and beyond what's expected. And so we started there, really. We started saying, okay, now what leads to that? At the time we were working on this book, there was a lot of research being developed in the sense of belonging area. So we brought that concept into our thinking. And then we stepped back and said, okay, now what's going to lead to sense of belonging? And that's where those principles, those values of the company really came out. And Paul started thinking about this idea of commonality, equality, and cohesion. And in our methods, in our modeling, we model CEC, commonality, equality, and cohesion, on sense of belonging and those 4 outcomes. Then we stepped back and said, okay, now where does DEI fit in all this? So if you're looking at the model in the book, we start from the right-hand side. These are the outcomes we want. And then we back into it. And it's clear to me that what Paul was on, what he had been talking to his team about, this idea of let's focus on what we have in common, not so much what we have that's different. That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. We had to develop a measure to capture that. And that commonality measure, I developed in conjunction with a doctoral student. We developed that measure. We know about equality. And then there's a measure for cohesion. So anyway, it all came together that really validates what Paul had been doing based on the company's core values.
I think that's what I loved about the book, is that you're taking a different tack in approaching a global issue. And there's a chapter at the beginning that talks about the power of language and the choice of words. And you've made it a choice to move from diversity and the baggage and the preconceptions and the misconceptions that brings to this phrase commonality. So tell me a little bit more about what you mean and experience when commonality is at the heart of this concept.
Well, see, I made the point and really believe that diversity is super important. Diverse thinking at the table is always really valuable in any situation. But people don't come together until you get past your differences, and it's commonality that causes people to connect and to develop relationships and ultimately to care about one another. And I don't care what the commonality is about. It could be about what kind of food you like. It could be what kind of movies you like. It doesn't matter. What happens is you find, oh, I like that too, or I like this too. And it's that starts to build energy in relationship. If all you're going to talk about is how we're different, that already is an energy drain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is more about within a workplace. In a workplace, you want things that are going to bring energy upward and get people working together more closely. And we found that it's commonality is critical because that's where the conversation really starts to deepen and the caring is really established. Same thing with equality versus equity, because equality says we all get the same shot, we all get the same rewards, we all can be helped differently. And that concept within the concept of equity is an appropriate one that, hey, we need to see everybody's strengths and weaknesses and help people accentuate their strengths and lift up their weaknesses. But hey, at the end of the day, we want everybody measured the same and everybody being able to be rewarded the same. Same thing with cohesion is way beyond just inclusion. Mm-hmm. Just being included does not necessarily mean appreciated. But cohesion is when we're so well connected. The definition of the word cohere is to stick together. And isn't that what you want in your business?
Oh, especially on those tough days. So I'm curious, give me some pragmatic tactics. What could I, or a listener or a viewer of this episode, do immediately to start fostering that sense of inclusion and uncovering the commonality within their colleagues or their network?
Yeah, there are many things you can do, but the main issue here is that it's not a program. This is a methodology. This is saying these are our values. That's why I call it a values-based, culture-driven, people-centric approach. Because the whole idea is not to just come up with a quick little program of how to go after commonality. No, what it is about weaving into the fabric of your ongoing activities day in and day out, values that cause people to find out about each other and to see that they have common values. And so, we do so many things in our company to reinforce this, from our recognition program to our new employee orientation program to how we talk about ourselves outwardly when we're recruiting people. This concept we talked about earlier about entrepreneurship being a commonality that we have is another example of what you're looking for in people to make sure that they're working together. So there's a lot of pieces that weave together to make this happen. And that's what the book will help describe. I actually go through 10 items at the end about things that you can do to get on the right track to have this values-based, culture-driven, people-centric approach really start to take hold in your company.
And I
one
think
of the challenges, sorry, Eli.
What he said, I'm sorry, but I wanted to build on what he said. That's the key. This is cultural. This is cultural. It's baked in, just as he said, it's baked into the way the organization operates. It's the leadership at the very top. It's all of that. So it's a culture more than anything, as opposed to a program. Just reinforcing what Paul said.
Yeah, I love what you just said there, that it's baked in and it's from all levels. It's not just that you have to do it or they have to do it. We all need to do it together. And I'm curious because, as my colleague Eric would say, in response to this, and I've heard my clients say it in response to our research around the importance of professional relationships and friendships at work, is it's motherhood, baseball, and apple pie. It's the common sense. Yeah, I get it. But this is a business and we've got results to deliver. So I'm curious around, you can espouse these values. I can nod and go, yeah, I get it, because I want to come work at Insperity. But if my vision for how to role model those is slightly different, how and when do you do that course correct?
That's a good question. And I would say that what helps you to get on track and to tell whether you even need a course correction is what Eli was talking about earlier. because what I understand is common among business leaders is they are after the same objective. They're after business success. And if you really get down to what leads to that, these 4 outcomes that we focused on: individual discretionary effort, everybody doing their best. Number 2, people working together well so that the collaboration level is high. Innovation, people having the ideas bounce around and bam, better ideas come at lunch when you're together after the meeting sometimes than they do during the meeting. And then of course, alignment, where you're able to get people aligned with whatever the objectives are because they're aligned as a values-based and culture-driven and people-centric business. So that's the important foundation that helps you to always get back on track to trying to get to those points. And what happens is the biggest obstacle to DEI really working anywhere has been leadership commitment, because it's a sideline. Commonality, equality, and cohesion is not a sideline. It's going to get you those 4 key outcomes that drive business success. So let's get on with it. Let's do it. And leaders jump on it. And then you see some real results change in the company.
So Eli, your passion is research. And in the book, you talk about the rigorous statistical analysis, which kind of gives me cold chills as I think back to my own rigorous statistical analyses, and then peer reviewed. And so why was that important to ensure all voices were collected and heard and seen in the data and the analysis that you did?
Right. No, that's a great question too. So, we have these ideas, right? And so Paul has what we call theories in use, right? In other words, he knows this stuff and he's putting it into practice. What I wanted to do is to validate what he was thinking about. And the way I could do that is by going to his employees, his own employees, and surveying them and getting them to respond to a survey. Right. And when you look at the results, as I said earlier, it absolutely validates the kind of culture that Paul and his team have been building over many, many years. So we wanted to show both audiences, those audiences being business leaders and academics who we tend to be a little skeptical. Right. So does that work? How do we define that? How do we measure that? Those are the questions we always have. Right. So as academics, it also appeals to that audience. So we wanted to make sure that not only did we have these great ideas, but we could test those ideas empirically. That's what that was about.
Yeah, there's a quote in the book that I highlighted where you talk about DEI as the gasoline in the engine that's helping to move us on, but the CEC, your concepts, are the accelerator that gets there quicker, and I'm going to ad-lib here, more harmoniously. So tell us again the connection between the two, because the whole conversation and spotlight on DEI is shifting right now, not necessarily for the better. And how is that impacting the conversations that you are part of?
Yeah, absolutely. DEI, unfortunately, has an original unifying objectives, but over time has deteriorated, gone through different phases of being more rote for a while and mundane, and then to being more divisive than it was unifying, and then even to some ways being toxic in the business environment and being detrimental even to the potential value of a company. Now, so the fundamental foundation, is it good to have diversity around the table? Yes, absolutely. But that's a starting point, not an end game. So the commonality goal is a much higher level of an objective that gets results. And so it's a starting point, but not where you want to end up. Same thing with equity is a good concept in terms of looking at individuals and their strengths and weaknesses, which is part of what coaching is in a business. But to have equity applied to groups is really an inartful way and an inaccurate way to work with groups to get results. It's equality that makes people feel much better as a group, that, hey, you're going to reward me for my individual effort the same way you're going to reward everyone else. And so, again, equality is a higher goal. The same thing with cohesion as opposed to inclusion. Just being included is a starting point, but it can't be the goal. Now, I think it's a perfect time for business leaders to move off of the DEI terminology and the whole effort that has diminished to a degree over time. And let's shift gears to something that adds energy to the business and gets results, as opposed to, and it can be built off that foundational element. And it is, but it goes back to the original unifying objectives and gets the results.
So I'm curious then, what's the WIFM, the what's in it for me? And I mean that at, well, let's look at it at three levels. What's in it for the organization? If they choose to make an intentional investment in creating a culture of connection, a culture of belonging, what's in it for the company? What's in it for the team that I'm part of or leading? And what's in it for me? And let's assume I'm not in the C-suite, but I'm somewhere in the organization. So three-part question, what's in it for me from the organizational lens, the team lens, and the individual? Why should I care?
I'm happy to do that. Eli, would you like to start too or not?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. You know, when I think about what we've measured here, we've measured employee engagement at the highest level. That's important. If you look at the 4 outcomes, what we're really capturing is employee engagement. And so for the organization, what that means is when you can fully engage your employees, they're going to serve your customers well. That's been documented in the research. They're going to serve the customers well, right? They're going to be more satisfied. They're going to stay on the job longer, right? You don't have that turnover that you typically have, right? And so they're going to perform at the highest level. That's what's in it for the organization, right? When I go down to the team level, one of the things we did measure in the study is team creativity. This is how each team felt about themselves and their performance, right? So even at the team level, they're going to perform higher. They're going to be more creative, more innovative. At the individual level, who doesn't want to work for an organization that's delivering a sense of belonging? That is, I feel that I belong here and this organization appreciates me, and I'm going to give it my very best effort because it's not about my own individual success. It's about how we perform at a level that delivers high performance in a sustainable way. And that's the story of Insperity.
Yeah, Insperity is quite a case study of amazing business performance that's driven by those 4 outcomes that we talked about as a result of the commonality, equality, and cohesion that we had inside our organization. And it was kind of the foundational element of the values-based, culture-driven, people-centric approach I took early on. But I think it's important to note that Eli's research was so powerful because it reinforced and it validated what we had done. And the way I describe it is we were consciously incompetent. I mean, we were unconsciously competent, excuse me. I'll get to that next phrase in a minute. We were unconsciously competent. We did a great job, but we didn't understand why it was, how it was built and how it was working so well. Now, once we got through this process of evaluating where we were and wrote it all down, we've gone through a process to make sure the whole company understands the validation that Dr. Jones helped us understand. And for a while there, you become consciously less competent. It's almost like I use the golf example. A golfer who's great as a young person, has a lot of natural talent and skill, they're just unconsciously competent. And then when they start to learn, they start to dig in and try to work on detailed factors in their swing, and they get less effective for a while. But once they get past that and let that come back out, now they have both, the both best of both worlds. They have that talent and skill, and they also have the understanding of what's causing the results. And then they go to the next level and become consciously competent. And that's where we have really worked toward today. And that's the whole idea for any company, to get to that point where their business performance will be powerful.
So I'm curious, as we come towards the end of our time together, I know when conducting the research for You, Me, We, why we all need a friend at work and how to show up as one, we crafted an ally mindset profile, and there are 5 practices in it. And as I look at me, much like you, Paul, I live and breathe a lot of these. They come second nature, abundance and generosity being one of them. At times it's an overplayed strength because I'll say yes when I should really say no, or give a qualified yes. And so what it brought home for me was that there were areas like courage and vulnerability, showing more of my real life journey, for example, was not going to cause the sky to fall in. I did not have to wear an invincible professional mask, which I had done for much of my career. So I'm just going to ask both of you, as a result of the research, whether it's the 10 principles, whether it's the core case study of Insperity, what was your takeaway as to where are you leaning in, either to turn the dial up or turn down an overplayed strength when it comes to making differences work?
Yeah, I think for me, this took a considerable length of time because I thought through every element of this and wanted to make sure I was communicating in a way that would build relationship one to another. And so some of the things you're talking about, having some level of vulnerability, et cetera. I'll give you a good example that is in the book, because for most business leaders, CEOs, the easiest way to deal with this subject is to hire someone else as a senior DEI executive. And then you just get out of the way and you don't have to deal with the subject. And you don't have to accidentally step on the wrong phrase or the wrong word or you don't have to talk about this anymore. And I think that's a major cop-out. And, I think, as we talked about a little earlier, everyone has to own this, including the CEO has to own this personally. And that's why I said, no, we aren't going to have someone else with this name on them, because all of us have to own this personally. And that means you have to be willing to have discussions that on sensitive topics. And you have to have an environment where you can say, hey, look, everybody, as we discuss this, let's give each other grace about how the discussion goes. And so we can all learn and grow together. And so, hey, I've had to do that too. And, when people expect you to be the CEO and always say exactly the right thing in the right way, that doesn't happen. So that's just part of real life.
Thank you for sharing, Paul. What about for you, Dr. Jones?
Oh, this is personal. When I think about the hope that we're offering people right now, I can think about being a person of color and really wanting an opportunity in these companies. And there are lots of folks that way. Not just people of color, we're looking at gender and all. Everyone wants to feel part of the organization. And that's what we're offering, a way to accomplish that. So it is personal. And I'm really hopeful that there will be a lot of people that will actually take the time and read what Paul and I carefully constructed to offer some hope. Now, we're starting in the workplace, right? When we look at our society today, we know that. Right? A lot of folks need to read this book and understand what we can do when we come together. That's what's most important.
You're speaking my language. Better together is one of our tag phrases here at SkyeTeam. So how can people who've been listening to this conversation or watching this video learn more about your work and how they can apply it in their own teams and organizations?
So, the last chapter of the book are, 5 to survive and 5 to thrive, 10 points about how to get this in place and really make it work. So I just suggest going either to Dr. Jones's website or mine and get a hold of that book and read through it. And, I'll tell you what, I sent the book to all CEOs of the whole Fortune, 1,000 companies, because I just want the word out there. And, I want this to be the conversation starter. And then you can go through step by step to take it to the next level. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Final words, Eli?
Thank you for the opportunity. Audience, thank you for listening. Pick up the book, read it, and then send us a note. We're both on LinkedIn. You could send us a note and let us know how you feel about it. It's been really a pleasure to get the feedback from the folks who have read it. Those are my final words. Bye.
Okay. Well, Paul and Eli, thank you for a powerful conversation. Thank you for your book, Making Differences Work, a new values-based, culture-driven, people-centric approach to achieving commonality, equality, cohesion, and business performance. I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes below. Please do get a copy, write a review online. I know Paul and Eli will appreciate it, and start benefiting and making a difference for those who work with and for you. Thank you again, both. Thank you. That was People First.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much for joining Morag today. If you enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you learned something worth sharing, share it. Cultivate your relationships today when you don't need anything before you need something. Be sure to follow SkyeTeam and Morag on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you have any ideas about topics we should tackle, interviews we should do, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, drop us a line at info@skyeteam.com. That's SKYE team.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and remember, business is personal and relationships matter. We are your allies.